Well, hello. We're here again, Kerstin Heusinger and me, Djamila. We have just witnessed the 29th hearing in the criminal proceedings against Reiner Fuellmich, the German lawyer and the co-founder of Corona-Ausschuss. And Kerstin, it has been another eventful morning. It was short. It was, I think, 11:30 or so when we stopped around that time. Mm-hmm. But a lot of things happened. Do you want to start with your observations?
Yes. I mean, I think it was a quite special day because all of us knew that Reiner Fuellmich's mother had passed away. And this happened, I think, on Monday or Tuesday?
Yes,
Monday, yes. And the hearing that was actually scheduled for Tuesday was postponed, and so I mean, everybody knew that Reiner he has been isolated for a few months now. He even had to live this painful event of the loss of his mother alone in his cell, and that was very present. And I mean, a few people came clothed in black and wearing a white flower, a white rose.
And other people had a black ribbon.
Oh yes.
Yeah. And as far as I understand, he also there weren't any visiting hours this week planned.
No.
So he was actually quite alone in his morning.
Yes.
So that was one thing that happened.
And I mean, Reiner came in, and I think it's important to mention, you really saw on his face his sadness. It was really quite special to me.
Okay, and then luckily we were able to make some pictures this time. We had gotten permission from the court to take some pictures. There were pictures taken when the process started, and so we had applied to do that again as we had the feeling that the process is coming to a close, that maybe the court could give us another opportunity, and they acknowledged it. So for that we're very grateful to the court. So there will be more pictures coming. And then, so as I was out putting away my camera, because I was only allowed to take pictures before the hearing, in the meantime, already a lot of things had happened. And you were there. Yeah, well, it was, I mean, Reiner Fuellmich was in the room before Katja Woermer arrived this time. And there were his defender, Tobias Pohl and Edgar Siemund were already there with him. And I think Katja Woermer was outside, and she was putting a request to hear a witness. Yeah. And the witness was Bittel, a quite close friend of Reiner's, and but also he runs the Bittel TV channel, a Swiss channel that he was one of the first to sort of start asking like what actually happened here, I think. Yeah. Okay.
And I think they got in contact very early in the beginning of the Corona Investigative Committee. They contacted quite early. Yeah. And so Katja Woermer had put this request, I think, and so the judges, as usual, went out very quickly again, but it was only for 5 minutes. And for me, it was as well remarkable that this time, I mean, they had not these very long pauses, besides in the end, and they left Reiner inside. Yeah. So they didn't. He did not have to go downstairs in his cave.
Yeah. But that was only because they knew it was only 5 minutes.
It was very short.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it was quite funny because they came back and then were presenting whether or not they would acknowledge this request. But it was almost like a thriller, you know, because he spun it out, and only the last words we actually finally heard that he was accepting the witness. Yeah. So then Bittel came in. And curiously enough, he was only allowed to be asked one question, and that was if Reiner Fuellmich had been willing to pay back the money, as is testified in the last hearing, to what lawful entity, what type of company was he going to pay it back? Which is a very strange question to ask somebody who is not a lawyer.
Yes.
And then,
but still, it is a very important question, because this question came actually up quite late in the hearing, in the process, and it's so important to know which entity will actually get this money. But it was at the same time, as I said, quite curious that Roger Bittel was asked these questions, as he's not a lawyer, and it was not at all his way of perceiving things.
No, and Kühnemann, who is a lawyer and who was the witness last time, he wasn't allowed to answer this question. Because remember, Edgar Siemund wanted to discuss with him, like, what do you see then? You're a company expert like I am, is what Edgar Siemund sort of said, not literally. Mm-hmm. But the judge wouldn't allow this discussion. And now he's asking Roger Bittel, who wouldn't know to answer. Yeah. And so then the answer was more like, well, it was Reiner always intended to pay it back to Corona-Ausschuss. And then the judge asked again, but what do you mean by Corona-Ausschuss? Which Corona-Ausschuss? And because the whole problem with this whole thing is that there was never an account, as we said before. There was never an account for Corona-Ausschuss. The money was borrowed from an account of Tobias Weisenborn, but that account had been cancelled again by the banks, so they couldn't pay money back to that account. And when Viviane Fischer paid back her loan, she paid it back to the second organization, so the next Corona-Ausschuss, so to say.
Which is quite special, actually, because this raises so many questions, even in this way of proceeding, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, Corona-Ausschuss is the German term for Corona Investigative Committee. Yeah.
I'm just so you're
probably people know that, but it's so obvious to us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the question is then, has it been rightfully paid back? Now, Viviane Fischer herself paid it back to this other organization. There was once a complaint against her, but that got put aside. They didn't take that on as a prosecution, which makes it all very iffish or fishy what's going on. So Roger Bittel, he confirmed that yes, he had put Reiner Fuellmich had put the money in the house. Mm-hmm. Yes, he was willing to pay it back. I think that those were the most.
Well, he said as well that Reiner had become a friend in the meantime since the summer of 2020, and that he was always telling him the truth, and he would never imagine Reiner lying actually to him. And he said as well, if he had lied, I have told the next day to public.
Yeah.
So, but it was totally clear to him that he didn't. Yeah. And, I think that was an important point.
Yeah. And then something interesting happened. The lawyers were allowed to comment on last hearing's witnesses, on the statements of last hearing witnesses. And I think Katja Woermer had a very good, she's very good at putting things in a logical order so you can easily follow what she's saying.
It's very clear, yeah.
But she mentioned that apparently this Mr. I.K., this witness, this lawyer, had 3 days or so after the hearing, after his testimony, had sent another testimony to the court, and not so much the content of his statements, but the dates, the timeline was different, which then implies that it is more in line with his client's statements, Viviane Fischer. Now that was kind of remarkable, and she did ask the court, strange, I don't know if you're going to allow this. And then she went on to just basically repeat or summarize what the witnesses had said last time. Mm-hmm. The problem though with this change in this witness's statement is he now says that actually he was approached by Viviane Fischer in late September.
Yes.
And not in July, as he previously implied.
And he was talking about summer 22, right? Yeah. He was always talking about summer. The end of September depends on the weather, but it's not actually in the summer.
Yeah, but he had also literally said that she had, her first back payment was in August.
Yes.
And he said, well, then I must have told her to pay it back 4 weeks in advance, 4 to 5 weeks in advance, so maybe even July, is what he said.
Yes.
So now it turns out he meant late September. But if it was late September that she asked his advice, and if she never talked about there being a shortage of money, that there never was a problem, that she knew that Reiner had put the money in the house, that there wasn't a problem with him paying it back, then why did she make the statement on the 2nd of September? So that still doesn't add up totally.
Yeah.
So it's
a lot of contradictions there. Yes.
And that is really worrying about this case, that statement. You cannot rely on anybody's statement, it seems like.
I mean, I think, which we just mentioned, that a thing that is quite remarkable is as well that none of the witnesses made an oath, right?
Not a proper oath. No.
A proper oath. So, I mean, the judge always left them without this oath. So actually, it was like he always told the witnesses beforehand, you have to tell the truth in front of the court. But actually, we know now that things changed afterwards. It was not quite the truth, but
yeah, they never
anyone.
have to confirm. Yes, I will tell the truth or something. They
Yes.
just sort of get this remark. You know that you have to tell the truth, and otherwise it's a criminal act. So they are told that, but it's not like they have to say, I swear. I don't know if that's because it's not in practice anymore to do that in Germany. I don't know.
I never heard about that, but I mean, why would he do that? I mean, why would he tell them in the beginning, you have to tell the truth, and then we know that the truth is not always told, but nothing happens.
Yeah.
I mean, what's that?
There's no consequence.
Why telling it? I mean, it's just it's just I don't know. I don't need to have really a sense of law in order to consider this a bit weird.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
I mean.
Anyway, the statement, the written post-testimony statement of this witness, IK, then was used by Grossenbach. I mean, after Katja made her statement and Reiner did his statement, but then it was Grossenbach's turn, and Grossenbach used the written statement rather than the actual testimony to comment. And that produced a lot of clashes between, not only did the judge correct him at some points, like saying, yeah, but you're now talking about this written, and we're not even sure we're going to allow the written correction. But he went on like, that is not what he meant, and maybe you can comment better, because there was a lot of German waffle.
Yeah, well, I have to admit that I had a little bit, I found it quite difficult to follow him in the details, which a thing that I found remarkable. I mean, it's an aspect that might be a little bit not that important, but I mean, he's German, right? And the lawyer, the co-lawyer, Reiner Fuellmich worked with in his what do you call that? In his cabinet?
Practice.
In his
law practice.
Yeah. For more than 20 years actually. Her name it's a totally German name, Katrin, and he always talked about Catherine. So I decided to call him Great River from now on, Mr. Great River, because I found that quite weird. And I mean, he mixes everything up, and for me an important point was that you never know, us as the press or the public, who he's really
representing.
Whom is he representing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that was an interruption that Katja Woermer did. She suddenly said, but who are you actually representing here? Are you representing the two sponsors you're claiming to represent, or are you here for Viviane Fischer?
Yes.
And I thought it was a bit of an odd thing that the judge didn't go on to that, because that is a big question.
It is a big question, yes.
There?
He's always talking for Viviane Fischer. Actually, you hear very, very little about the donators.
Yeah.
But he reclaimed to be there for the donators.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be an issue if it weren't for the fact that his request to be a party for Viviane Fischer has been denied 3 times.
Yes.
So that's why it is an issue.
Yeah. So it is quite mixed up, right? You don't really know his intention.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was, as you probably already told, he was always referring to the written statement, to the corrected statement of this witness, and not to the version he was giving in front of the court.
Yeah, and at one point, Tobias Pohl, so also one of the lawyers for Reiner Fuellmich, he also interrupted and he said, I want it to be written in the protocol that I go against what he's saying, all the claims he's making, because he's making it on claims that came afterwards, on statements that came afterwards and that haven't yet been accepted by the court. So I herewith want to put into writing that I object and I contradict what he's saying. So that was important.
Yeah.
Another important interruption came from Edgar Siemund.
Yes, right. I think he referred to a chat conversation, right? That is proving in some way the real actual position of Viviane Fischer.
Yeah. The question is the whole time, was it the task of the two? Did the two who lend the money, did they have to have the money present so that it could always be accessed? And apparently in this chat, I'm distracted because a lot of children play around this. Apparently in this chat, she demanded Reiner to pay back some part of the money. And he said, the money will come when I've sold the house. What about your loan? Can you not pay back from your loan?
Right.
And she said, and he said, or is it gone? And she said, yes, it's gone.
It's all gone.
It's all gone. And then she said, but I could pay it back from the pre-sale of the book. Which means she didn't have the money. So, which is not a problem if it weren't for the fact that Reiner is prosecuted because he didn't have the money
for
available.
The same reason. Right. Yeah.
So those were, and it had already been discussed earlier in the process. What Edgar Siemund said, but it sort of, he summed it up very well. Yeah. And it came at a time that probably needed to be said again. Like, look, what are we talking about? She herself didn't have the money.
Yeah, and I mean, this chat alone proves her position. Yeah, that was very important as well, because we discussed a few points of view and so on. But this was, I mean, this alone stands for itself. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So there were heated debates between Grossenbach and the defense, and then the judge coming in, and then Katja Woermer saying to the judge, Grossenbach is going way beyond his scope, and then Schindler, the chair
as well, yes.
Reiner Fuellmich went beyond his scope, so he can go beyond his scope. It was again a lot of spectacle. Are we forgetting something?
Well, I mean, there are always so many details in what people say, right? In what in the relationships, in the how do you call it, in the
expression,
in the expression, the face expression. Well, there was one very interesting thing about Mr. Great River, Mr. Grossenbach, because he said that the lawyers who are the plaintiffs against Reiner Fuellmich, which means the co-founders of the former company of the Corona Investigative Committee, and Marcel Templin, yes. But I mean, he mostly spoke of the two of them because they are requesting the money, right? Mm-hmm. And he said they are. It's a dead company. And they are walking around like zombies. I mean, he had a really strong expression in order to say
there are zombies lingering around a death yard or something like that. And Antonia Fischer was like, what?
She was, her eyes were so big. And I mean, you rarely see really real expressions on her face, but this time she could not hide it. I mean, it was quite obvious that she was shocked. Yeah. And he
just went on. He repeated it a couple of times. Yeah, this dead company, like doom.
Yeah, but I mean, in a way, with that, he's right, because you always ask yourself, why do they want the money for? What do they want the money for? I mean, it was always Reiner Fuellmich and Viviane Fischer who did the work, who did the entire work. behind the curtains and on the stage. I mean, they were doing the lives, they were interviewing people, they were choosing people, they were showing their faces. I mean, they started showing their faces in the very beginning as well. But I mean, what did they really contribute? So why do they want millions for people who gave their money for this work to be done? That's my big question to them, and I would like to have an answer. A really serious answer, besides being part of this company that never became a real company, that never had an own account. Why do you think you merited this money?
No,
I mean,
right.
It's a big question for me, you know.
Yeah, there were a couple, you talk about details, there were a couple of other details, like Reiner Fuellmich went on to describe the witness, this Catherine B. Catherine B. Yeah, but in English, now we are talking English.
Now we are talking
English,
yes.
How she had been an excellent colleague or worker at his company, and how she had stood up, I didn't know this, at 3:30 in the morning before her work to deal with all the emails for Corona-Ausschuss, and that she wasn't amused, but she did it.
More than 360,000 in 2 years, I think. That's that's something. He mentioned that, yes.
Yeah, and how the two of them went looking for other offices to continue the work, and that they had found a place, signed a contract for 5 years, and that it finally stranded somewhere in 2023.
Well, this practice, I mean, these rooms that they were looking for stranded because they were ready to sign the contract, I think. But actually they found out which kind of work Reiner was doing, and they said, well, no, we prefer not to.
Yeah, but there was one that was willing to sign the 5-year contract.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't get that, okay.
And then, but they just couldn't do their work anymore. That was a big problem. Yeah. That's also what Catherine stated last time, that it just overtook their whole office.
Yes.
All this to do with Corona-Ausschuss. And although she had nothing to do with it, she did see Reiner take off every Friday to Berlin to do the broadcasts. Yes. She then did the back office, and Reiner said today she was an excellent organizer, and he was totally happy with her running it. And that's why he also was totally happy with spending a lot of time in America and having his work office in Germany, because he could rely on 2 people mainly, and that was her and his
other colleague,
main secretary.
Yes.
So that was another thing. Another thing that came up was the sort of I had a term, I knew what the term was, but it's when you have a debt or you allow somebody to have access to your assets.
Oh, I think this refers to Marcel Templin, no? To the fact that he could actually do this.
Take the money.
Take the money, yes. Take the money from the
sailor.
How do you call it? Sailor?
From the seller, from the buyer.
From the buyer, actually. I don't. Is buyer a real term?
Well, the one who buys the house.
Who buys the house. Yes, and he had. I mean, this was an important point as well, that they always told that they did not influence this lawyer or
solicitor.
So yes, but actually they did, and he called Katrin. Confirmed that. He called me and he said, from all the sides I get so much pressure, and I mean, the reason was that there was no how do you call that, no guilt on the house of.
There was no debt. There was no claim on the house.
No claim. So everything was paid. Everything was fine with the house of Reiner Fuellmich in Goettingen, which is quite important because that house really means a value, right? It was it
was an asset.
It was really a real value. So, and then they checked this up, and I think because of some not very clear way of dealing, Marcel Templin could get into that, and this is all related to the class action. Procedure. Actually, I mean, it's very difficult to explain all the details because we would stay here for a few hours. We can probably do that sometime at 24 hours live, but there are so many details, and I mean, it's quite weird the fact that he could get into that and take away the money from Reiner, and not only the 700,000, he was actually doing it for 600,000, but for so many interests.
If he had a claim.
If he had a claim.
Then
right.
it was for 600 something, but he took 1.15 million.
Yes. And by the way, the judge, the court here confirmed that him doing this is illegal.
Seemed
I think
illegal, yeah.
No, it didn't seem. It is. He really declared that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
yeah.
that was that. I'm sure we've forgotten tons of stuff.
There's so many more to say. Yes. I mean, there's. I mean, I probably as an end word. It was so obvious that Reiner was very much touched by the death of his mother. And he thanked people in the end for all this support and thinking of him and compassion. And he said, well, my mother, now she's ready to help me. And believe me, she will. And she will not get through anything of that. And I found that quite strong as a statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so that was our English update. I hope it was useful, interesting, and I will not be here next week, but Kerstin will be here probably. And so please follow her on Twitter or other channels.
Facebook, Vika, and I mean we are going to publish another article as well with a Belgian medium with BAM.
Okay, so stay tuned.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thank you for watching.
Bye-bye.